The night was heavy with smoke and dust. The city's old trade district smelled of oil, rust, and something worse. Fear. Lanterns swung above broken stalls, throwing sickly yellow light on the crowd. It was a market where nothing good was sold. A place where voices shouted and creatures cried, where the rich came to buy what no law would allow. The human walked slowly through the narrow lanes. His boots crunched against cracked stones. His coat was worn, his face tired. He was a stranger here, a lonely traveler who had no family and no friends. His eyes searched the stalls, not for food, not for tools, but for something he himself could not name. Merchants shouted in many tongues, offering cages of strange animals, barrels of glowing crystals, and even collars that hummed with power. But what caught his ear was a harsh voice calling from the shadows. 3 credits, only 3. Take her or leave her, cheaper than feed for a beast. The human stopped. His gaze turned toward the stall. A group of aliens laughed, their sharp teeth flashing. They pointed at something small sitting on the ground. There she was, a thin figure, no taller than a child, her body wrapped in rags. A dirty sack covered her head, tied with a piece of rope. Her arms were bound loosely in front of her. She did not move, she did not cry, she only sat like something already broken. 3 credits for that? Another alien mocked. Not worth even 1. The seller spat on the ground. She was supposed to be a gift, but the man who ordered her died last week. Now she is useless, no one wants her. Take her before I throw her to the dogs. The human's chest tightened. He should have walked away. He should not care. But his feet stayed still, his eyes locked on the trembling figure. "Why the sack?" he asked. His voice was calm, but inside he felt something burning. To hide her shame, the seller sneered. Some buyers don't like the look of them until the first night. Remove the sack and the price goes up. But for you, stranger, 3 credits is enough. The human's fists clenched inside his pockets. He knew this market was cruel. He had seen creatures sold before. He had heard the laughter of the crowd when someone begged for mercy. But this was different. The girl's shoulders shook slightly. He noticed it was not the cold, it was fear. Her small hands gripped the rope binding them, not to pull away, but as if holding herself together. The crowd grew louder, laughing, calling out for him to walk away. "Don't waste your money, human," someone shouted. "She's cursed," another said. But the human reached slowly into his coat. His fingers found the last of his credits, just 3. He stepped forward, his voice cut through the noise. "I'll take her." The crowd fell silent for a moment, then burst into laughter even louder than before. The seller blinked, surprised, then grinned wide. "You? You will buy her?" The human dropped the 3 credits into his dirty hands. The coins clinked, heavy in the silence. The seller bent down, cut the rope around the girl's wrists, and pushed her roughly toward him. She stumbled, nearly falling, her sack-covered head tilted. She did not look up. Her body was shaking now, but she did not resist. "Yours now," the seller smirked. "Don't come crying when she brings you bad luck." The crowd shouted cruel jokes. Some clapped, some whistled. But the human ignored them all. He placed a hand gently on the girl's arm, guiding her away. As they walked through the market, the noise behind them slowly faded. The human felt many eyes watching him, judging, mocking, but he did not turn back. The girl's steps were weak. Every few seconds she stumbled. He slowed his pace to match hers. She said nothing, not a single word. Only the sound of her breathing could be heard under the sack. When they reached the edge of the market, the human stopped. The stars above the ruined city glowed faintly. He looked at her, his heart heavy. Why had he done this? Why spend the last of his money on someone he did not know? He had no answer. He only knew that leaving her there, in the shadows, had felt impossible. The girl stood quietly, her hands close to her chest. Her thin frame shook with every breath. She seemed smaller than ever, but even hidden under the sack he could feel her fear and pain. The human whispered softly, almost to himself, "No one deserves to be left like that." The road ahead was dark. His home was far, His food was little. His life was lonely, but now beside him walked a girl bought for only 3 credits, and deep inside he knew this choice would change everything. The market's noise still echoed in his ears as the human led the girl through the dark streets. Behind them, laughter followed like a shadow, cruel and sharp, but the farther they walked, the quieter it became. The city's lamps flickered, leaving patches of darkness where only their footsteps could be heard. The girl's steps were weak. Each time she stumbled, he slowed down. She never spoke, not even a whisper. The sack still covered her head, hiding her face from the world. When they reached a quiet corner, the human stopped. He looked at her small figure, shaking in the cold. Her hands clutched the rags around her body. He could feel her fear as if it was heavy air between them. "Do you want water?" he asked softly. His voice was gentle, but the girl only flinched, her head tilted down, silent. He sighed, opening his small flask. He poured water into his hand and offered it. Slowly, the girl leaned forward under the sack, her thin lips touching the water. She drank quickly, as if afraid it might be taken away. For a moment, he just watched. His heart tightened again. She was not an animal, not a thing, but someone who had been treated like both. They kept walking until the market lights were only a memory. The human's home was small, made of old stone and wood at the edge of the city. It was no palace, only a lonely shelter with 1 bed, 1 table, and a single fire. When he opened the door, warmth spilled out. The girl froze at the entrance. Her shoulders shook as if she expected another blow. "It's all right," he whispered, guiding her in. She stepped inside, her bare feet tapping the wooden floor. She stood still, too afraid to sit, too afraid to move. The human lit the fire, its orange glow filling the room. He glanced at her, still hidden beneath the sack. The rope around her neck kept it tight. She was breathing fast, trapped inside her own fear. "Wait here," he said gently. He took bread from the table, broke it into small pieces, and placed it in front of her. He did not push her to eat. He only set it down, then sat at the other side of the fire. Minutes passed in silence. The girl's hand shook as she reached for a piece. She lifted it slowly under the sack, nibbling it like a starving bird. For the first time, her body stilled, her hunger stronger than her fear. The human leaned back. Watching the flames, he thought of the 3 credits he had given. It was all he had left. Now there was nothing in his pocket, no coins, no silver, yet he did not regret it. He spoke softly, more to himself than her. 3 credits for a life. It sounds foolish, doesn't it? Her head turned slightly. She did not answer, but he felt she was listening. That night he gave her the bed. He spread an old blanket on the floor for himself. When he pointed at the bed, she shook her head violently under the sack, refusing. But when he laid down on the floor, she finally crept to the bed and sat on its edge, still trembling. Sleep did not come easily. The human lay staring at the ceiling. He remembered the crowd's mocking laughter. He remembered their voices saying she was cursed, worthless, doomed. But he could not believe it. Not when he had seen the way her hands shook, not when he had felt the weight of her fear. In the middle of the night, he heard her crying, very softly, almost hidden. The sound pierced him deeper than any blade. He wanted to speak, but he stayed silent, letting her release the pain she carried. The next morning, the city was already awake when he opened his eyes. The girl was still on the bed, sitting upright, as if she had not slept at all. The bread he left was gone, every crumb eaten. When he stepped closer, she flinched. He stopped, raising his hand slowly. "I won't hurt you," he whispered. His words were steady, patient. He wanted to remove the sack, but he knew it would break her. Trust was not something he could demand. It had to be earned, piece by piece. He boiled water, making a thin soup from the little grain he had left. The smell filled the room. Her head lifted slightly. He gave her the bowl, stepping back so she would not feel trapped. She sipped slowly, her hands shaking less this time. As the fire crackled, he looked at her again. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "No one will sell you. No one will hurt you. Not while I am here." Her hands froze around the bowl. For the first time, she raised her head slightly toward him. The sack still covered her face, but he felt her eyes behind it, watching, searching. The human knew this was only the beginning. Buying her had been the easy part. The real choice, the true decision, was what came next. He had nothing left but his home, his fire, and his patience. Yet inside he felt something stronger than regret, stronger than fear. It was the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that for 3 credits, he had taken a life into his care. The world outside would laugh, call him a fool, call her a curse. But inside his heart, he felt a quiet certainty. The decision he had made in the market of shadows was not the end. It was only the first step, a step that would change both their lives forever. The fire burned low as morning light crept through the cracks in the shutters. The human sat at the table, mending an old coat with careful hands. He could feel the girl's presence behind him, still sitting on the bed, still hidden beneath the sack. 2 days had passed since the market. In those days she had not spoken a single word. She ate little, drank little, and never removed the sack. She moved like a shadow in his home, silent, waiting, always afraid that someone might strike her. The human had patience. He knew fear that deep could not be undone in hours. He remembered his own years of loneliness, the cold silence of empty rooms. He understood how a wound inside could last longer than any scar on skin. That morning, he placed bread and warm water on the table. He did not call her. He only left it there and sat back. Soon he heard her light steps, hesitant, slow. She reached for the bread. Her hand shook less than before. He saw the way she tilted her head, the way she sniffed softly, as if testing if it was safe. When she turned back toward the bed, the human spoke gently. "You don't have to hide here." His voice was calm, not demanding, not sharp, just steady. The girl froze. She clutched the bread tighter, her head lowered again. The human sighed. He rose from the chair and walked to the window. He opened the shutters, letting sunlight spill into the small room. Dust danced in the golden light. For a moment, the house felt less heavy. He turned to her slowly. "I don't know your name," he said, "and you don't know mine, but I promise you this. No one will hurt you here." The girl's fingers gripped the edge of the sack, but she did not pull it away. He saw the fear in the small movements of her body, like a trapped bird unwilling to open its wings. Later that evening, as the fire cracked, rain began to fall outside. The roof creaked. Under the storm, the girl sat on the bed, hugging her knees. The human sat nearby, sharpening a dull knife. The storm grew louder, wind slamming against the walls. Then it happened. A loud crack of thunder shook the house. The girl let out a sharp cry. Her hands flew to her head. She curled down, trembling under the sack. The human dropped the knife and rushed to her side. "It's all right," he whispered, kneeling. "It's only thunder." But she did not calm. Her small body shook violently. Her breathing quickened. She pressed her hands against the sack as if it was suffocating her. The human's heart pounded. He reached forward, his voice firm but gentle. "Breathe, you're safe, no one will hurt you," she gasped, pulling at the rope tied around her neck. Her movements were frantic. She could not breathe under the heavy cloth. Without thinking, he grabbed the rope and cut it loose with his knife. The sack slipped from her head and fell to the floor. The room went still. For the first time, he saw her face. Her skin was pale with a faint glow, almost silver under the firelight. Strange markings shimmered faintly along her cheeks as, if painted by starlight, her eyes were large, glowing softly with a deep violet hue. They were filled with terror, but behind that terror there was something else, something fragile. The human froze, staring. She was not what he expected. She was not a beast, not something ugly. She was beautiful, but broken. The girl pressed herself against the wall, gasping for air. Her lips trembled as she whispered in a shaky voice the first words she had spoken. "Don't hurt me." The human's chest ached. He shook his head quickly. No, no, he whispered. I won't. I swear it. Her glowing eyes darted around the room, searching. Her hands clutched her knees. She looked ready to run, ready to break. He lowered himself, sitting on the floor so he would not tower over her. His hands rested open on his knees, empty, harmless. You're free here, he said softly. No one owns you, not anymore. The girl blinked, her lips parted, but no words came. She looked at him with disbelief, as if his promise was something her world could never allow. Minutes passed in silence. The storm outside grew softer. The fire warmed the room. Slowly, her breathing steadied. She still trembled, but her eyes no longer searched for a door to escape. The human picked up the fallen sack. He held it for a moment, then tossed it into the fire. The flames devoured it quickly. The girl gasped softly. Her hand lifted slightly as if she wanted to stop him, but then she froze, watching as the flames erased it forever. No more hiding, he said gently. Not in this house. The girl's violet eyes filled with tears. She wiped them quickly with the back of her hand. Her voice cracked as she whispered again, Why? Why did you buy me? The human looked into the fire. His jaw tightened. He did not have a perfect answer, only truth. Because leaving you there was impossible, he said. Because no one deserves to live in a sack. Her lips trembled. Her eyes searched his, face looking for lies, but she found none. That night she did not cry when the thunder roared again. She only sat quietly on the bed, watching him as he slept on the floor. For the first time, her sack was gone. For the first time, the market of shadows felt far away. And for the first time in the human's lonely house, two broken lives had begun to breathe the same air. The sack was gone, yet silence still ruled the small house. The girl no longer hid her face, but she spoke very little. Days passed where the only sounds were the crackle of fire, the drip of rain outside, and the soft clink of bowls when he set food before her. The human tried not to push her. He knew trust could not be forced. Every morning he left bread, water, or soup on the table. Every evening he worked quietly on fixing tools or mending clothes. He let her see that his hands carried no chains. Only work, only patience. The girl stayed close to the bed, her violet eyes always watching, sometimes full of fear, sometimes full of questions she could not bring herself to ask. At night, she often curled under the blanket, whispering words. In her own language, words the human could not understand. He never asked what they meant. He only listened, letting her know someone heard her voice, even if broken. One afternoon, he returned from the city with a bundle of firewood on his back. As he pushed the door open, he saw her standing by the window. She turned quickly, startled, as if she had been caught stealing light. Her cheeks flushed faintly, the glowing lines on her skin shimmering. She dropped her gaze and backed away, curling again near the bed. He set the firewood down and spoke softly. You can stand there if you like. His voice carried no anger, no command, only permission. She did not answer. But that night he noticed her sitting closer to the fire than usual, her thin hands stretched toward the warmth. The days grew colder. The storm outside never seemed to end. The house became their whole world. Sometimes he spoke to her as if she might reply, telling stories of his travels, of the stars he once dreamed to see. She never spoke back, but her eyes followed his lips, listening. One evening, as he stirred a pot of thin stew, she suddenly moved closer. Her small hand trembled as it reached for the spoon. He froze, surprised. For the first time, she wanted to help. He stepped back slowly, letting her stir the stew with shaking hands. The firelight danced on her glowing skin, her face soft with concentration. You don't have to, he whispered, but she shook her head quickly, almost fiercely. It was not about the stew. It was about proving she could do something. Anything. When the food was ready, they ate, together for the first time. Sitting across the fire, she still kept her distance, but she no longer turned away when his eyes met hers. At night, the silence sometimes broke with sudden cries. She woke from nightmares, her body shaking, her breath short. The human would sit up quickly, not touching her, but speaking gently. It's all right, You're safe. His voice was steady, like an anchor in the storm. Slowly she would calm. Slowly her trembling would fade. And though she never said thank you, her eyes showed something new. Something fragile but growing. One morning, while mending his coat again, he noticed her watching the needle in his hand. Her eyes followed each stitch. He smiled softly, then handed the needle to her. Her hands shook as she tried, but the thread slipped. She let out a frustrated sound, half sob, half growl. For the first time, emotion spilled raw from her. He did not laugh. He did not scold. Instead, he placed his larger hands gently over hers, guiding the needle through the fabric. Together, they made the stitch. When he let go, she looked at him with wide eyes, not of fear this time, but of surprise. You can, he whispered. You just needed help. Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, she nodded once, very small, but enough. The silent days stretched into weeks, but they were no longer the same silence. It was softer now, filled with small movements, small signs. She began to eat without waiting for him to leave the room. She began to stand by the window when he was inside, not only when he was gone. One night, as the fire dimmed low, he heard her whisper, "Why?" The word was so soft he almost thought it was the wind. He turned, meeting her glowing violet eyes. "Why what?" he asked. Her lips trembled. "Why? Are you kind?" The human's heart tightened. He wanted to give her an easy answer, but truth was all he had. "Because I know what it means to be alone," he said. "Because no one deserves to stay broken forever." She looked at him for a long time, tears filling her eyes. She did not speak again. But that night, she slept without waking in fear, her breathing steady, calm. The silent days had not ended, but they were changing. Slowly, gently. Each moment was like a seed planted in soil, long frozen. And though no flower had bloomed yet, the human could feel something stirring. Hope. The storm outside had not stopped, but inside the small house something new was growing. It was not trust yet, not fully, but it was no longer fear either. The girl still spoke little, but her eyes no longer looked like a hunted animal every time he moved one night. The wind howled louder than before, the shutters rattled, rain slammed against the roof like stones. The human was sitting near the fire when he heard it. Her cry, sharp and broken. She had been sleeping, but now she thrashed in the bed, her face wet with sweat, her body trembling. He rushed to her side, careful not to startle her. "It's all right," he whispered, "and you're safe." But her eyes snapped open wide with terror. She pushed at the blanket as if fighting invisible hands. The sound of thunder cracked above, and she screamed without thinking. He reached forward, wrapping his arms gently around her. At first she struggled, her small fists pushing weakly against him. But then, slowly, she stilled. Her breath came in short bursts, then softer. Her forehead pressed against his chest as the storm raged outside. "It's over," he murmured, rocking her slightly. "No one will touch you, not while I'm here." His words were simple, but he meant everyone. Minutes passed before her body stopped shaking. She whispered, so faintly it was almost lost under the thunder, "I dreamed again." The human nodded, not asking what she saw. He knew it was something terrible, something from the life she had left behind. "You're here now," he said. "The dream can't follow you forever." For the first time, she didn't pull away. She stayed near him until the storm softened. When she finally lifted her head, her violet eyes met his, shining with tears. Her lips trembled, and she whispered her name. It was the first gift she gave him. Her name, soft and strange, on his tongue. He repeated it carefully, and she nodded. Her chest rose with a shaky breath, as if speaking it had taken great courage. From that night forward, something shifted. She still feared the world, but she no longer feared him, at least not completely. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them began to grow. It showed itself in small moments. She stirred the stew without waiting to be asked. She mended a small tear in his sleeve while he was away. She even began to sit near him when the fire was warm, not too close, but not across the room anymore. Sometimes he caught her watching his face when she thought he wasn't looking. Her eyes full of questions, questions she could not yet speak. He never pressed her. He let silence carry the weight until she was ready. One afternoon he found her outside near the woodshed. Her bare feet touched the wet earth. Her glowing skin caught the dim light of the clouds. For a moment, he thought she might run. But when she saw him, she froze instead of fleeing. "You don't have to stay locked inside," he said gently. "You can breathe the air here, it belongs to you too." She looked at him long, then nodded once. Her steps carried her back to the house, but the door no longer felt like a cage. At night, as the fire warmed them, he told her more stories. This time she asked a question, only one. Her voice was still quiet but steady. "Were you always alone?" The human paused, staring into the flames. He nodded slowly. "For many years, yes." He did not hide the pain. He let her hear the truth. "I thought it was easier that way, until the day I saw you." Her lips parted. Her violet eyes glimmered. She looked down quickly, clutching the blanket, but she did not ask him why. She already knew deep in her heart. The bond grew fragile, but real. A thread of trust tying them together, fragile as glass, but stronger each day. One evening, when the fire burned low, she stood and walked across the room. Her steps were soft, uncertain. She stopped in front of him, holding out a small piece of bread she had saved from her meal. "For you," she whispered. Her voice cracked as if unused to kindness. The human stared at the offering, then at her face. His chest ached. He took the bread gently. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick. She looked at him for a long time, then sat beside him, close enough for their shoulders to almost touch. The fire flickered, shadows danced on the walls, the storm outside howled again. But inside the small house, something stronger than the storm was growing, not chains, not ownership, not fear. It was trust. It was the first fragile piece of family, and both of them knew, though neither said it aloud, that this fragile bond was worth more than the 3 credits that had brought them together. The winter wind had softened, and the first signs of spring touched the land. Snow melted into streams that trickled down the dirt paths. The human small house no longer felt like a cage of silence. It felt like a place where something alive had begun to grow. The girl no longer stayed in the corner all day. She moved around the house, helping with small tasks, sweeping the floor, stirring the stew, or folding the worn blankets. Each act was quiet, but each was a piece of her slowly choosing to belong. One morning, he found her outside standing in the sunlight. Her glowing skin shimmered faintly, her violet eyes half closed as she lifted her face to the sky. He stopped, not wanting to disturb her. For the first time, she looked like someone free, not someone broken. When she noticed him, she flinched, at first, but then she straightened. Instead of running back inside, she stayed. Her voice came softly. "The sky here, it feels different." He smiled, glad to hear her speak without fear. "It is yours too," he said gently. "This world doesn't belong to anyone. Not the market, not the men who sold you. It belongs to those who choose to live in it." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "And you chose me." The human felt his chest tighten. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I did." From that day, their bond grew stronger. They began to share meals not in silence, but with small words. Sometimes she asked about his past, about the stars he spoke of, about the journeys he once dreamed to take. He answered honestly, telling her of the loneliness that had followed him for years. She listened carefully, her eyes soft with understanding. One evening, he built a fire outside under the open sky. He wanted her to see the stars more clearly. The night was clear, the heavens wide and endless. She sat beside him, her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes widened as she looked upward. "So many," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. He nodded. Each one is a sun, and some have worlds like this one. He pointed to a bright cluster. I once wanted to leave to see them all, but I never had a reason strong enough. She turned her head slowly toward him. Her violet eyes reflected the starlight. And now? The human hesitated, then spoke quietly. Now I do. Her cheeks glowed faintly. She looked away, but her hand rested lightly on the ground closer to his. Not touching, but near enough to feel. The nights became warmer, and the days longer. Together they worked on the small garden outside, planting seeds in the soil. She knelt in the dirt, her glowing markings catching the sunlight. Her laughter, soft and brief, surprised even her. The sound filled the air like music. He froze when he heard it, smiling without realizing. She covered, her mouth quickly, embarrassed, but he shook his head gently. Don't hide it, he said. Your laughter belongs here. Each day she chose a little more, chose to live, chose to stay, chose to trust. One afternoon she sat near the fire with a piece of cloth. Her hands moved slowly, stitching a small patch onto his worn coat. When he walked in, she looked up nervously. I thought, maybe I can fix it. He sat beside her, watching. His heart swelled at the sight. You already fixed more than my coat, he said softly. She lowered her eyes, but her lips curved faintly. That night, as the fire dimmed low, she spoke again. You gave 3 credits, she whispered. 3 credits. For me? Her voice shook. But I am not worth even 1. The human's jaw tightened. He moved closer. His voice was firm but kind. No, he said. You are worth more than I can ever give, more than any market can price. Don't ever believe otherwise. Tears welled in her violet eyes. She shook her head. But I am broken. He reached out slowly, carefully. His hand brushed hers, warm and steady. So am I, he whispered. But together maybe we can be whole. Her breath caught. She looked at him long, and for the first time she did not pull her hand away. She let his touch stay, light but real. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. It was not master and servant, not rescuer and rescued. It was a choice, hers as much as his. The days that followed carried more warmth than before. She began to hum softly when she worked. She began to step outside without waiting for him, and when he spoke of home, she no longer looked confused. She began to understand he meant both of them, not just himself. The bond they shared had grown into something deeper. It was no longer fragile trust. It was something she was choosing, every day with every step, and though neither of them said it aloud, they both knew what it was. Family. Spring spread across the land. The snow was gone, the air smelled of wet earth and green leaves. The small house no longer felt empty. Laughter, soft, rare, but real, sometimes rose from its walls. The human and the girl had built something no market could ever sell. But peace was fragile, and the world beyond their door had not forgotten them. One evening, as the sun lowered, a knock rattled the wooden door. The girl froze, her violet eyes wide with fear. The human stood slowly, his jaw tightening. He opened the door to find 2 men from the city, traitors with greedy eyes. We heard, "A rumor?" One of them sneered. "You bought something for 3 credits, a strange girl marked by stars. We've come to see if it's true." The girl trembled behind him. The human stepped forward, blocking their view. "She is not for Sally," he said firmly. The men laughed. "Everything has a price, human. You can't hide her forever. One day someone will take her." The human's fists clenched. His voice was steady but sharp. "Not while I breathe." The traitors sneered, spitting on the ground before leaving. Their threats lingered in the air. The girl's body shook as she whispered, "They will come back." The human turned to her, kneeling so his eyes met hers. "Let them," he said softly. "You are not theirs. You are mine. No, you are ours. You belong here, not in their cages." Her violet eyes filled with tears. She had once believed she was nothing, worth less than the sack that covered her head. But now, hearing his words, she felt something deep inside her stir. That night, she did not cry. She sat beside him by the fire, close enough for their shoulders to touch. Her hand rested gently against his, and she did not pull away. The days after grew stronger. Together they worked the garden. Together they fixed the roof. Together they sat under the stars. Their bond was no longer fragile. It was steady. It was chosen. One morning, while planting seeds, she looked up at him, her lips parted. "When I was taken," she whispered, "I thought my life was over. I thought I would die in chains or worse, but you," her voice cracked, "you gave me back the sky." The human swallowed hard, his voice came low. "And you gave me back my life." She looked at him long, then smiled. A real smile, faint but bright. The kind of smile that could melt even the coldest years of loneliness. That evening, as the fire glowed, she spoke again, this time without fear. "They called me worthless," she said, "but you call me family." "Why?" The human's eyes softened. "Because family is not bought, not sold. Family is chosen, and I choose you." Her heart trembled. Her hands shook. She whispered, "Then I choose you too." The words hung in the air like a vow, unbreakable. From that night onward, they were no longer two broken lives forced together by chance. They were one life bound by choice. When traders returned days later, demanding to see the girl, the human stood firm at the door. This time he was not alone. The girl stood beside him, her violet eyes glowing fiercely, her voice steady. "I am not for sale." The men muttered curses and left, but neither of them cared. In that moment, she had chosen to stand, not behind him, but beside him, as family. Seasons passed. The house grew warmer with life, the garden bloomed, birds sang near the roof. Sometimes neighbors whispered about the strange girl with glowing skin who lived with the lonely human. Some mocked, some judged, but he never listened. She never cared, because in their small home, they had built something greater than what the world could understand. At night, they sat under the stars. She leaned against him, her voice soft. "Do you think we can build more? A bigger home, maybe a place where others like me can be safe?" He looked at her, his heart swelling. "Yes," he said firmly, "we can build as much as you dream." Her smile widened. She took his hand in hers, not trembling anymore. Her violet eyes glowed like fireflies under the night sky. 3 credits had once been the price of her life. 3 credits had once been a cruel joke in the market of shadows, but now 3 credits had turned into something priceless. They were no longer buyer and bought, not rescuer and rescued. They were family, and together, beyond the shadows of the past, they stepped into a future where no market, no chains, no cruel voices could ever reach them again.